The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Happy New Year! I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Dudding.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
And we are in the most humanely spiritual frame of mind I've been in a long time. This is going to be a year, I'll tell you. Oh, you bet. And we're here to talk about storytelling and what storytelling does as a performance art, as a tradition, as a communication venue. How about those apples?
They're very ripe.
But there we go. There we go. And Kate Dudding and I are members of the Story Circle of the Capital District, which is a gathering of some 40 folks who love to get together and tell stories and learn how to do things better. And we have a website that tells a lot about storytelling, and it's www.storycircle@atproctors.org. And we encourage you to go there and check out what's going on. And there are also about 150 plus stories from this show of other guests that are available there. So it's a fountain of information and entertainment. I don't know about that. Maybe font. Fountain.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It's nourishing and joyful.
Sometimes words can just not quite fit. Although I understand that there was a great fit of words last month in Proctor's Theater.
Yes, in the GE Theater at Proctor's, we held our 21st annual celebration. The title this year was "It Ain't Necessarily So." There were 9 stellar tellers.
9 stellar tellers.
And we had personal stories. We had personal stories by Joe Peck and Christy Keegan and myself. And then we had folk Sodi Saluratus by Fran Berger. You know how animated she is, and she was walking back and forth and being all the characters. And we had and Claire Beetlestone gave us a Hindu myth, and Eliud Nieves gave us a myth from Zambia. And then we also had historical stories, Betty Cassidy and Sandy Schumann. I think I mentioned everybody. Yes, indeed. So it was a potpourri of types of stories. And I heard from some people that all the stories were wonderful. That was a direct quote.
All right.
So.
All right.
And the way I tell is the applause at the end. All the Karen Pillsworth, our MC, brought all the tellers back up to the microphone, and the applause was going. We took a bow. The applause was still going. We took another bow. The applause was still going. So then we applauded. Then I started applauding the audience.
Ah, wow.
So it was definitely sustained applause at the end. So.
And celebration is a benefit for Story Circle, right?
Well, for storytelling in the area. With the profits from the previous celebrations, we've underwritten 100 storytelling programs in area libraries, museums. We've had a few house concerts. So these 21, or the 20 previous, have spawned 100.
And one of those 100 was another series at the Fort Salem Theater where we have another celebration.
Right, a spin-off.
A spin-off. I love it when we spin-off.
Right. And there was a very good. I went to that also as an audience member, and that was well attended, and again, the stories were stellar. Two of them were the same, but then the others were different.
Two of them were the same people who told at Proctor's.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And then one woman is a student of Betty Cassidy and Margaret French. They've been doing learning how to be a storyteller up in Crandall Library in Glens Falls. And Margaret Watterson started learning about that then, and she had a wonderful story about her mother and how she was, when caring for her mother, who then had Alzheimer's, when she time shifted and went back to her college days, and Margaret joined in.
Oh, learned a lot, didn't she?
And she learned a lot. She learned a lot. They were in a restaurant, and that stayed where her mother said, "Do you see those boys over there? They're supposed to be our dates. What are they doing talking to those girls over there?"
You see, there's nothing like a good family story to expose a lot of wonderful material.
Yeah, and while Margaret's cousins did not approve of Margaret taking care of her mother and Margaret joining in her hallucinations, Margaret felt that this was one of her favorite memories of her mom.
I would think
being
so.
with her mom.
I would think so.
So.
And
So what about you in storytelling?
Well,
Recent past?
I did take Celebration off because we were traveling for Thanksgiving, but Nancy Payne and I had a wonderful program of kind of the Irish stories of Irish Thanksgiving at the Irish American Heritage Museum, and just a fun, wonderful time. So that was my one excursion. And I guess I might pause here and say, if you're out there and you're thinking about maybe I could be a storyteller, you probably already are. And if you want to learn more about how that works, on our website is our monthly meetings at this library, Colonie Library, and at the Pine Hills Library over in Albany. Or there are a couple of open mics, and you can come and listen and maybe try something out. So be encouraged. That's what our real purpose is. And actually, Kate, one of the most encouraging people I know in storytelling is graced us with her presence as our guest teller.
She's crossed a state line even to do that.
That's right, but she's older than 18, so it wasn't a big deal. I mean, I just want you to know that.
Transporting minors across the
That's
state
right.
line.
We didn't do that. We didn't even encourage a minor across. Motoko is with us, and Motoko lives in Amherst, Massachusetts, and comes to us from her native Japan as a storyteller and a mime, and you are one of the most encouraging people I know. So thank you for coming over and being with us this afternoon.
Thank you. It is great to be here.
And, we usually ask folks who are guests here about how they became a storyteller. But when I think about you, I think you must have always been a storyteller.
I have always been a reader ever since, as soon as I learned how to read, Japanese obviously. Growing up in Osaka, Japan, I read incessantly. And I discovered my joy of stories, narratives, the stories that has the troubles and solutions, the conflicts and resolutions, and lessons and morals. Those are the kind of stories that I love. And so I sort of naturally grew into creating and telling my own stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just give us a little bit of the timeline. You were a high school student in Japan and then came to the University of Massachusetts?
Right. When I was a teenager, I got into theater. And then in college, I discovered mime. So I first came to the United States as an exchange student in mid-'80s. And I was going to become a professional mime and spend the rest of my life doing it. But eventually, I got sort of tired of being in the invisible box, so I got out of the box.
Silent invisible
right. Although back then I was also telling stories just without words. So right then, my partner Eshu Bumpus, well-known African American storyteller, introduced me into this art form, and I have not looked back.
Wow! Wow!
Yes.
So good for Eshu, I'll tell you. And I think the first time I can remember hearing you tell was a program at the Norman Rockwell Museum way back.
Okay. Oh, that was a long time ago.
Last
Maybe-
century?
Last century. And I was new to storytelling and had gone over there with Gay and a couple of friends. And I remember that evening defines the term mesmerized for me. It was a beautiful, crisp, cold winter night. We crunched through the snow, and the area was warm. And you told the story about the crane, the weaver,
Right.
and in the process of which you became that crane woman in my mind, and I watched you move, and it was just the most exquisite thing. And I don't think I've heard you tell again when I haven't thought that term of being exquisite. I bring a laugh. I don't bring much grace to the storytelling thing, but
That's
you
not
bring.
true.
People smile and it's graceful, so I think that's great. And so you came back from your exchange experience and went to UMass, or that was the exchange experience?
Right. So then I went back to Japan and came back again almost right away.
Really?
And I have been living here ever since.
And when you became a storyteller, not looking back, who else encouraged you besides Eshu? I'm curious about how we've learned from each other, and we've
Right, of course, and you and Kate, you both have been a great encouraging force in my professional career. I have studied mime and theater with my late teacher, Tony Montanaro. Also, I have studied storytelling and mime, storytelling with Elizabeth Ellis, who is a Dallas, Texas-based storyteller who comes to Kate's house, actually, once or twice a year.
Part of the family,
workshops.
we call her.
Yes, and that's one of the great things about this art form is that it's not just you make up something on your own and present it to see if you sink or swim, but the process of being a community among friends to develop your art and craft is such a joyful thing.
And for those of you watching who might want to know more about the community, in addition to Story Circle, Story Circle is a member of the League for the Advancement of New England Storytelling, LANES. And they also have a website, lanes.org, and they have a phenomenal festival weekend in Amherst, Massachusetts at UMass. Oh, no, not this year, not this year. Oh, they had.
It moves, the conference moves around, and this year it's going to be in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
I'm sorry.
Other side of Massachusetts.
I was pitching it because it was close.
Yes.
Even though it's not close, it's in a very interesting spot, and you would really enjoy it. Isn't that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
We could always make a story up about almost anything.
Right.
And as much as I'd like to just kind of hear more of your story, I'd like to hear. I think everybody would like you to hear one of your stories. And you have a great array of graceful accoutrements. So I have no idea exactly what you're going to do, Motoko, but I have hope.
Right. Well, in recent years especially, I have expanded my repertoire for the programs that I offer to schools. And one of them is origami. And of course, you know origami is the art of paper folding that originated in my old country. I have made each of you a paper rose. Love to.
Do you want the pink rose or the yellow
Pink or
rose?
yellow?
Well, pink, I'd like the yellow. Yellow is
I'll have the pink because it goes with my shirt.
Yes.
It really is a nice thing.
You did this out of one piece of paper?
Yeah, origami and storytelling in my mind have a lot in common because they are both arts and craft. There's a great deal of skills involved, but yet anyone can do it. I was working at a school last year, and it just happened to be that this famous American origami master named Michael LaFosse was working at the same school for a different grade. And I was so, we had met before, and he remembered me, and I was so flattered. He was such a sweet person. And I said, I teach origami too, but you're the master. And he said, that doesn't matter. Origami, you know one, you teach one. and that makes you an expert. And he actually taught me how to make this lovely, what we call triangular pyramid, and right then and there, and I was very, very impressed. Also, origami allows you to use your imagination, just like storytelling requires you to use your imagination. So I wanted to share with you and the viewers a couple of what we call origami stories, and you are going to...
I'm going to do orange.
Try it with me, right? So this is the easiest origami story that I know, and it goes like this. When I was a little girl growing up in Osaka, Japan, my grandmother was the oldest person I knew. In fact, she was so old, no one knew how old she was, not even herself. So one day I asked my grandma, "Grandma, how old are you?" And she said, "I am as old as a mountain." So we are going to look at the white side of the paper, find one corner, find the opposite corner, put them together to make a mountain. Then I decided to switch my question. I said, "Grandma, how did you get to become so old? What is the secret to a long life?" And my grandma said, "In order to live a long life, I do 3 things every day. First, I hug someone I love every day." So we're going to take this sharp corner at the bottom of the mountain and bring it over to the middle of the other side of the mountain right here to make the paper hug itself like this. Then we're going to take this other sharp corner and bring it to this corner you just created by folding, like this, to create a cupcake shape or a pentagon. So the paper looks like it's hugging itself. Then my grandma said, "The second thing I do every day is I bow to someone to say thanks, because in Japan we bow." So my grandma and I bow to each other. Then we're going to take the tip of this cupcake, there are 2 pieces, we're going to take just one and make it bow so that you will see the white part. Then flip it over and take the other top of the cupcake, make it bow the other way so that you will continue to see the white part, and now you have a trapezoid shape or a bucket shape. Then my grandma said, "The third thing I do every day is I drink a cup of tea." Now you notice that you've made a little teacup. And my grandma and I shared a cup of tea. So you see, those are the secrets to a long life. In order to live to be as old as a mountain, you must hug someone every day, you must bow to someone to say thanks, and you must drink a cup of tea every day. And that's the end of that one.
Oh, I love it. I could even do it. I was so petrified of not being able to do origami. That is just, you know, it is, actually, Gay does crafts with our grandkids. And this is a wonderful one to do that.
Yeah. And kids as young as, I've done this with kindergartners.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody can do it. Would you like to try one
Kindergarten,
more?
70s, same thing, right? Just
Right.
So, is this a traditional Japanese story, or
This story?
or you just
I learned it from my grandmother.
You learn it from your grandmother, really, really.
Oh, and it's the same grandmother that you have another story about asking
Well,
how old, and then you learned about the
right. I have
the
lots of
animals.
stories from my grandmother.
Yeah.
In fact, my grandma was the first person to tell me stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Would you like to try another
yes.
Oh, yeah.
one?
I want to do another one now that I've done one.
This one is a little more complicated than the
wanna be
first
pink or
one.
green?
I don't care.
I want to be pink. I'm into
Okay.
pink.
All right, and I got the yellow paper. All right. When I was a little girl growing up in Japan, one day it was raining outside. And so I had to stay in the house. But there was nothing for me to do. And I was bored out of my mind. So I asked my mother, Mommy, I'm so bored. What should I do? And my mother gave me this piece of paper and said, here, why don't you amuse yourself with this? I said, well, what am I supposed to do with a piece of paper? But she did not even answer me because she was too busy taking care of my baby brother. So I folded the paper in half. Then I folded it again in half so that it would look like a book. Then I opened it just once, and knowing that this book was open at the bottom and closed at the top, I started from the top corner, sort of like folding a paper airplane. Start from this other corner, using the center line, until I made a house with a big roof. Then, still knowing that this house was open at the bottom, I picked one piece at the bottom and folded it up like this. Then I flipped it over and grabbed the other side and folded up like this. And that way I made myself a little rain hat. And I put it on my head and I walked outside the house anyway. And I walked down the street and walked down the street until it stopped raining. So I took the hat off my head and I opened it and opened it until I could not open it anymore. And I had a diamond shape. Diamond is a girl's best friend. Who said that? Marilyn Monroe did. But that's only for people, girls who don't have real friends. Well, noticing that this part was a little bit messy, I tucked one under the other to make it flat. Then I flipped it over, tucked one inside, underneath the other side to make it flat. Then I grabbed the bottom of this diamond shape, just one piece, and folded up like this. Then I flipped it over, did the same thing on the other side, until I made myself a little sun hat. Then I put it on my head and I went down the street until I came to a great big river. You see, I wanted to cross the river, but there was no bridge in sight. I said, oh, I wish I had a boat or something. So I took my sun hat off my head. I opened it and opened it until I could not open anymore, and I made myself another diamond shape. Now, noticing that this diamond is a little bit open at the top, I pulled it apart to make a boat. Then I got inside the boat and went down the river. Okay? But the problem was, I had no idea how to steer a boat. I had never done it before. Plus, the water was high because of the rain, so pretty soon I lost control, and the front end of the boat hit a big rock on the shore. And the front end of the boat broke off. Oh no, I tried to back up, but then my other end of the boat hit a big tree on the other side of the shore, and the back end of the boat broke off. I said, oh no, and I tried to steady myself, but the boat hit a big rock at the bottom, and this part at the bottom of the boat broke off. Then I started to sink and the water started pouring into the boat. I said, oh no, this is the end of my life. I should have stayed home and listened to my mother. As I sank to the bottom of the river. But guess what? I came out okay because I was wearing a life jacket. And that's the end of that one.
That is wonderful.
Thank you.
That is such a great. And I lost you at the house. I just want you to know that I didn't follow you completely at the beginning, and I wound up Kate has done.
I've done origami.
In fact, Kate was the one who taught me how to make the origami frog.
Jumping frog.
Well,
That's my forte. But I have made cranes.
I have no forte, but
You have a three-tay.
I have yeah, that's right. It's one down. But well, it's remarkable, and what is so fun is that the doing puts everybody in the story.
Yeah.
And and then when you screw it up and you're not in the story, you're kind of, while you feel left out, you're still appreciative. So you don't ever get thrown out of the story.
Right. And now this one I think was from Joining In. There was a book published, a big paperback book. Anyways, I've seen this in a book. But did your grandmother also teach you this?
Right. This one I can't remember where I got it. Yeah.
Well, we're going to come back to your collection and your stories, but Kate, I think we ought to tell folks what's going on this month.
This is a natural
storytelling,
break,
because this is the after New Year's start in January.
Right. So, I made this lovely slide about you, lifting images from your website.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. But we'll start with the first Tuesday, Tales and Stuff, which is on January 3rd, the first day, a working day of the new year.
Right on.
Featuring Dan Berggren as the featured performer.
I've invited Dan, and
we hope he can make it.
And Dan, it's a great time for Dan because the theme is stories to warm an Adirondack winter. And as we know, Dan has made his second career after he retired as a professor at Fredonia, really extolling the Adirondacks in stories and songs. So that's going to be a good night. Bring your long johns and a story to share.
And then on Wednesday of the following week, there will be this Saratoga Storytelling Open Mic back at the newly renovated Cafe Lena. Whoa. The elevator won't be operational until the spring because blah, blah, blah. Anyways, doesn't matter. But a new, broader in-code staircase will lead you to the second floor, the redone second floor, on Wednesday, January 11th. And the featured teller there is Lolly Davidson, a professor at Adirondack Community College. That should be a good night. And then that Friday night, Shawnee Evenings at the Irish American Heritage Museum in downtown Albany will be featuring Barbara McCarthy, storyteller, and Frank Orsini, musician. Stories of Irish luck.
That's on Friday the 13th, don't you know? And
I wonder, do they have Friday the 13th in Ireland?
I'm sure that they do, and I'm sure that they've got
I know
both
they have
kinds of luck. Both kinds of luck.
But is it known for bad luck or not?
We'll find out.
We'll find
out. Frank Orsini is a wonderful musician who has learned the Irish harp, so he can kind of accompany Barbara. And Barbara is just well known as a great Irish storyteller and author.
She was born and raised in County Clare in Ireland, but she graces our area now.
Has a wonderful love story that she'll tell that night, I'm sure, about how she met her husband.
Will the Yank, her friends.
That's right. Hank the Yank.
Hank the Yank. There we go. Then on Tuesday the 17th, we'll be having the next Story Circle meeting right here at Colonie Town Library. Please bring, we welcome listeners. You can bring a story to share, but please tell it, don't read it. You could have an outline that you look down at on occasion, but we're not one of those. Okay, and then 2 nights later, the Interfaith Story Circle will be having, I believe, its 10th Tent of Abraham. Abraham is an important figure in both the Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim religions. Faith. So that's the Tent of Abraham. And there'll be, the topic is, Am I my brother's or sister's keeper? The featured tellers will be Musrat Chart. I have braces now, so occasionally I get to a word and I kind of Chaudhry. How do I say it with them in my mouth? Sandy Schumann, and Ann Snyder, Muslim, Jewish, and Christian tellers. At the Islamic Community Center of the Capital District, off of Central Avenue, on the way to Schenectady. Well, it's right, I think, at the border between Schenectady and Colonie.
We've all probably had conversations about Muslims, given the press. And one of the questions I've asked my friends is, have they ever been in a mosque? And many could say, my Christian friends could say they've been at a bris or a bat mitzvah and a synagogue. Folks haven't been in mosques. So I encourage folks who are interested in experiencing what the Muslim religious culture is, as opposed to what you hear about on TV, to make this program.
And it will start with a vegetarian potluck. You can find out more at their website, interfaithstory.org/Tri-City. Then the next night is Friday, the third Friday of the month, so there'll be storytelling with Janet Carter down at the Inquiring Minds bookstore in Saugerties. And Janet is someone who joins Motoko and me and others when Elizabeth Ellis comes up. So she's yet another student of hers. Then we will have our 121st Story Sunday at the Glen Sanders Mansion. Stories of being assisted and assisting others on Sunday, January 22nd, 5 p.m. with, oh my goodness, there you are, Joe Doolittle, Harlan Ratmeyer, and Kent Bushman.
Three spirits, as we refer to ourselves when we get together and tell. And this performance is a benefit actually for Kent Bushman's daughter and husband, Maggie Jo and Jason Smith.
Who are on a missionary adventure in Romania.
With the
we're not putting shoes on them.
We want to be lovingly supportive, and they have taken the position without really ever taking a salary, so that's why we're doing the benefit.
Okay, and then to finish out the month on my 45th wedding anniversary, as it happens. Oh dear. And then I said that without really thinking about the topic. Sit down, you're rocking the boat. On January 29th, 2 p.m. at Proctor's. That we'll be back up in the Fenimore Art Gallery, which is on the second level above the box office.
And again, that's 2 o'clock on Sunday. The Green Market meets at Proctor's, so they're on the first level all over the place. So you can come and graze the Green Market, buy stuff, eat lunch, and then come up and have stories, and we will provide dessert.
Yes, and the tellers will be Siri Allison, Betty Cassidy, myself, Margaret French, and Sandy Schumann.
Good group.
And if you are ever wanting a story, we have stories on demand at storycircle@proctors.org. You can go there and then click on YouTube, and we have over 150 stories for you to choose from.
Right.
Or origami to do shortly.
Well, that's quite a lot. That's a full month.
It's a full month for a not a very big area of the country.
Right.
We are a wealth of storytelling opportunities.
We are, and so please think about sitting in on one of those and bringing your friends. Speaking about bringing our friends, we have brought our friend here, who's charming and talented in many different ways. And I think we'd just like to hear another story.
Well, I think we would, but she's a good friend, and she tells people about my storytelling, and she makes wonderful comments about my stories. So I am very glad we drifted together. I can't even remember how that happened.
Me too.
Maybe we each knew Elizabeth, and I don't know.
Right, because you were hosting Elizabeth at your home. I emailed you or called you, and that's how we...
Yeah.
So you were drifting in your boat, and
right.
With our life preserver.
We're all drifting merrily.
and I didn't make my boat. I didn't even make my hat.
You missed the boat.
I missed the boat.
Okay.
Motoko, please tell another story, because otherwise Kate might tell another joke.
Oh, thank you. One of the things that I do, besides origami in schools and everywhere, is to teach children and adults about Japan. About a year and a half ago, when my son and I went back to Japan to visit my family, we went to see real sumo wrestling event.
Ooh.
This was my first time. I have watched sumo wrestling on television, and nowadays you can watch a lot of it on YouTube. But it was quite something else to go and see the real thing in the great big auditorium. If you would like to look at this catalog of gorgeous half-dressed, half-naked men.
Someone
I don't want to be mistaken. I just don't know.
But sumo wrestling is the Japan's national sport, and it has more than 1,000 years history. So a little over 1,000 years ago, it started as a part of a celebration for the rice harvest. Then there was a time in our history when Japan was ruled by samurai warriors. Sumo wrestling was part of every samurai warrior's basic training, along with sword fighting, archery, and study of classical literature. So this story comes from one such time, and it is called The Boundless Strength. Once upon a time, a long time ago in Japan, there was a young sumo wrestler and samurai warrior named Daikichi. Daikichi was known throughout his region for his skills and strength in sumo wrestling, and he loyally served his lord in a great big castle. But one year, his lord fell ill and passed away. And because his lord did not have male children, the family was abolished. The castle was taken over by another clan, and Daikichi suddenly found himself unemployed. He could not find another job, no matter how hard he tried. He felt disappointed, dejected, and bitter. So he started drinking, he gambled his money away, and started to pick fights out on the street. He felt as if all his strength was draining out of him. Well, one night, Daikichi was slumped over against a wall in a dark alley because he had no place to go. Suddenly, he heard some dogs barking and a woman scream. Some wild dogs had cornered a young woman into the alley. So Daikichi jumped up, grabbed a stick, and said, "Get! Get!" He chased the dogs away. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I am fine. Thank you so much." Now, the young woman was so grateful, and seeing that Daikichi had no place to stay, she invited him to come to her house to spend the night. Her name was Kayo. Kayo was a young widow who owned a little tea shop nearby. Daikichi was awed by Kayo's beauty and kindness. I mean, Kayo did not seem to care that Daikichi had neither money nor job. Pretty soon, they fell in love. Daikichi stopped drinking and gambling and started to help Kayo in the store and around the house. Then, one day, Kayo came home and said, "Guess what, Daikichi-san? I'm pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Daikichi was shocked. He did not know what to say. "Oh, baby? But you realize I don't have any money. I don't have a job. How am I supposed to take care of you and the baby? What do you want from me?" In panic, Daikichi spun around and rushed out of the house. But of course, he had no place to go. He roamed around the city and finally ended up in a bar. The bar was crowded with drunken men. Daikichi overheard one of them say, "Hey, did you hear that the emperor in the capital city is hosting a national sumo wrestling tournament?" "Yeah, it starts right in the capital city in 3 days," another man said. I hear this time, whoever wins the championship will be rewarded with a big bag of gold, another man said. Daikichi knew that was what he had to do. He left right away without even saying goodbye to Kayo and traveled to the capital city. The city was crowded with hundreds of strong-looking young men from all over the country. Many of them were lined up in a long line in front of the emperor's palace to register themselves for the tournament. So Daikichi joined the line. But as he stood there, he realized that many of the other men looked much younger and stronger than he did. I mean, he had once been famous for his strength and skills, but he just had not done any training in such a long time. So he felt completely out of place and out of shape. But he knew he needed the gold. As he was standing there, though, he noticed this little old lady crossing the street, quickly coming toward him. She was holding a baby. This old woman came straight to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, would you please hold this baby for a few minutes? I will be right back. But would you please promise not to drop the baby or put him down?" Now, the Daikichi had no idea who this old lady was, or where she was going, or why she had picked him out of this long line of young men. But there was something urgent and serious in her voice that made him say, "Sure, fine, I promise." And he took the baby willingly in his arms. The old lady smiled, bowed, and quickly walked away. Daikichi looked at the baby. He was a tiny newborn, sleeping peacefully. Then Daikichi had this strange sensation. It felt as if the baby was getting bigger. Daikichi looked down, but the baby had not changed his size. Then he realized what was going on, and chills ran down his spine. This baby was not getting bigger, but heavier. It started out no more than 7 pounds, but by now it was 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 25 pounds, 30 pounds. Daikichi realized that he had been tricked. This baby was not human. That old woman was probably a witch trying to trick him. He was about to drop the baby like a hot potato, but then he remembered his promise. I used to be a samurai warrior. No, I am still a samurai warrior. And a samurai warrior never breaks his promise. The baby was quickly gaining weight. Soon it was 100 pounds, 150. When it reached about 200 pounds, Daikichi could no longer be standing. He knelt down and felt as if his shoulders and his knees were breaking. Sweat poured down his face, and he clenched his teeth tightly. 250 pounds, 300 pounds, he refused to let go. The old woman still did not come back. Meanwhile, the line ahead of him was moving along. People lined up behind him, impatiently urged him to move on, but Daikichi could not budge. Finally, they all started going around him, sneering and jeering, making fun of him for bringing the baby to the tournament. 350 pounds, 400 pounds, Daikichi thought he would faint right then and there. Then, as if by magic, the old woman was back. She effortlessly picked the baby up and stood tall and glowingly in front of him. Daikichi looked up in amazement. The old woman said, "Thank you so much for keeping your promise. I am the goddess of mercy, Kuan Yin, who protects the people in this city. Today, I had to help this young woman give birth to a baby. It was a difficult birth, so that's why I needed your help. If you had dropped this baby, both that young woman and her baby would have died. But because you kept your promise, they both survived. As a reward, I am going to give you and your children boundless strength. Now go ahead and wrestle in the tournament. And both the old woman and the baby vanished into thin air. Daikichi stood up as if awakened from a dream and staggered into the palace. But soon he found out that it was no dream at all. When he stood in the rounded arena set up in front of the emperor's throne to face his opponent, the strange and wonderful energy coursed through his veins that made him incredibly strong yet gentle. His first opponent, all 300 pounds of muscles, came charging, but all Daikichi had to do was blow on him. And his opponent immediately fell on the seat of his pants. Another opponent, all 500 pounds of muscles, came charging like a bull, but Daikichi danced around him lightly and stomped on the ground. The whole arena shook as if there was an earthquake, and his opponent immediately fell out of the ring. One by one, all day long, the wrestlers charged. One by one, all day long, Daikichi ejected them from the ring with a mere flip of a finger. At the end of the day, it was clear that Daikichi was the champion. The emperor rewarded him with a big sack of gold. Daikichi was happy, not just because of the gold, but because now he knew he was strong enough to become a father. He went back to Kaio and they got married and lived happily ever after. And it is said to this day that the descendants of Daikichi and Kaio always possess boundless strength. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. You know, I thought I was there in line, and that's just so vivid and so artfully simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the characteristic gestures that she used to differentiate her characters, as well as the character voices.
I did notice that. Maybe I didn't notice it, but I did do now.
Yes.
And the fact that I didn't notice it then, but do notice it now is important.
Okay.
It was so artfully done that it didn't seem like a technique. It just seemed as part of the whole fabric of the story.
And particularly the storyline of the fall from grace, the resurrection in love, the feeling of not being able to love, becoming the hero, accomplishment. Just fun.
But the old woman who trained him,
the goddess,
and taught him
goddess,
his inner strength,
and the heavy baby. I like that heavy baby.
We had a wonderful baby, but when he was having his growth spurts, there was nothing you could do to calm him at night. And it was like I was the only person up in the whole world, it seemed. Yep. Or at least my time zone. And heavy and, yes. Anyways, we digress.
But little boys grow up to be soccer players and college students and all that other stuff, don't they?
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have just 10 minutes left. I don't know if we should find out more about you or if you have another story you want to pull out. You don't have to tell another story.
Right. Oh, either way, I can tell another story if you like. Or
yeah.
And speaking of that, the old woman, the goddess of Kwannin, I wanted to give you the origami Kwannin.
Oh,
you have the best paper.
But they also look a little bit like Virgin Mary too.
Yes.
It's sort of like a
maiden is a maiden is a maiden.
Right.
So I'll give you a 2-minute warning.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. I would like to share a little old story from China, but it's also my own story, and for those of us who try very hard to please our parents. Once in old China, there was a young boy and a young girl who always loved each other. They lived in this little village way on top of a tall mountain. So they always loved each other and they grew up together. When it was time for them to get married, of course, they wanted to marry each other. So the young woman went to her father and said, "Daddy, I think I'm ready to get married. And you know who I want to marry, my sweetheart. We grew up together. Is that all right with you?" But then her father looked down and said, "No, my dear daughter, you cannot marry him." "But why not, father?" "Because our landlord wants you to become the bride for his son. He owns all our land. I had to say yes. So now you must marry the landlord's son." Now when the young woman heard this, her heart was broken. She went to the young man she loved and told him the story. And the young man was so disappointed, felt so bitter. He decided to leave the village altogether. He would travel down the mountain to the big city and start a new life all by himself. So that night he left without even saying goodbye to the young woman. Well, he got in a boat and he rowed down the river. He rowed and rowed for 3 days and 3 nights. At the end of the 3rd night, he was finally tired. So he put down the oar, he tied the boat to a tree on the shore, and he started to sing this little song that he and the young woman used to sing together. Bao ma liu liu de shan shan, kan din liu liu di chen yu. Then he thought he heard somebody singing with him. He said, "My ears are playing tricks on me. There's nobody around here." Duan duan liu liu de chao zai, kan din liu liu di chen yu. But there was no mistake. Somebody was singing with him. He got up and looked toward the shore, but all he saw was dark bushes. Yue liang wan wan, kan din liu liu di chen yo. Then suddenly, the dark bushes on the shore parted, and the young woman he loved stepped out. Her clothes were torn in places. Her feet were bloody from running through the forest. "Honey, what are you doing here?" "Dear, you are the one who I love. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Please take me with you to the big city." The young man's heart leapt for joy. He took her hands and brought her into the boat, and together they traveled down the river. Once they arrived at the big city, they settled down and worked hard, and in 5 years, they had 2 children. But during those 5 years, the young woman never wrote to her parents or corresponded with them in any way. Well, one day, the children came home and said, "Mommy and Daddy, how come all the other children have grandpas and grandmas, but we don't have one?" When the young mother heard the question, she started to cry. So the children went and asked the father, and the father did not know what to say. The young mother said, "I have been completely away from my parents' love and kindness for 5 years. It makes me feel so sad and ashamed." "Well, if that's the way you feel, why don't we all go back and beg for your parents' forgiveness?" So this time, the whole family together traveled up the mountain back to their home village. Their hearts were heavy because they did not know what to expect. When they reached the home village, they went straight back to the young woman's house. But in front of the house, the gate, the husband said, "Why don't you all wait here for me? I'm going to go inside all by myself and ask for your parents' forgiveness." And he went inside and into the living room, and there he saw the old parents of his wife. The first thought that struck him was how much older they seemed since 5 years ago. Then he realized they had been crying. He threw himself on the floor and said, "Forgive me, father and mother. I ran away with your daughter 5 years ago." Then the old father of his wife looked at him in the most peculiar way and said, "What kind of a crazy joke is this? Our daughter is right in this house with us, but she has been sick. She's been gravely ill for 5 years. She could not marry the landlord's son. She could not marry anyone. And now her life is about to end." The young man said, "What are you talking about? Your daughter and your 2 grandchildren are waiting outside the gate." So the old father rushed outside the gate to see if his daughter was there, and there she was. Meanwhile, the old mother of the young woman rushed inside to the back room to see if her daughter was sick in bed, and there she was. But when this young woman in bed heard the story, she got up and she dressed herself in best of her clothes, and she put some makeup on. She looked real pretty, and she walked outside the house. And there at the gate, the 2 young women met. And smiling, but without speaking, they stepped right into each other's bodies and became one woman. When the 2 women became one, the family became one. The young family decided to stay in the village, and they all lived happily ever after.
Wow.
Thank you for giving me the time.
Oh,
I love that story.
and you came in. We have 2.5 minutes left,
Oh,
so we can even
great.
chat a little bit.
And it's a magical story.
Thank you.
It's a magical story because, without the magical intervention that you get at the end, you don't quite understand how she could have run through the forest to catch up with the boat.
This story really speaks to me at a personal level because I had to leave my parents in Japan to come here as an immigrant to make a new life for me. And of course, nowadays I can go back and forth and visit, but still there's something that part of me is still there, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Mary Grace Ketner from San Antonio, Texas. I don't know if you know her. She mentioned this story and how it spoke to her when she had young children, but her mother was dying of cancer, like 2-3 hours away. And when she was helping her mother, she felt she should be helping her children. When she was helping her children, she felt. And
all of us with so many of our responsibilities and commitments feel torn these days. Not just women, but men too.
Right. Yeah. But we try to do our best, and that's all we can do. So
I think that's, I think in one other spot I've heard you and Eshu do that, where he sings part of it.
Right, we were singing together.
And
that's fun.
And that was just and Eshu has a great baritone voice. I mean, he's got a great range, so that the balance of the voices was just wonderful. So just great. Yeah. I love it. And it's been such a real treat to have you here in the studio, and for you outside in the world. We got to close it down. We hope you had a wonderful time, and you'll come back next month and catch our next show.
And we wish you a 2017 filled with wonderful stories.
Much good cheer.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.